view of the whole growing process. It will put all those other pieces into place and will have you growing mushrooms in no time. Although there is an endless array of specific cultivation techniques, it basically all boils down to one simple process, and that is expanding mycelium on various mediums until it eventually produces a fruiting body, or what we know as a mushroom. I've broken this process down into 7 basic steps that basically any cultivation technique follows to some extent. Step 1 is growing mushroom culture out on a petri dish. Now, when I say culture, I'm specifically referring to the mycelium of a species of mushroom that has been chosen for its advantageous genetics. There are some commercially available strains that have certain characteristics, like maybe they produce a bigger fruiting body, or maybe they just grow abundantly, or maybe they're selected for a various color or size. Either way, when you buy a mushroom strain online, you're typically buying a proven commercial strain or a culture. Of course, there are a lot of different ways that mushroom mycelium or culture can end up on a petri dish. One way is just you take a clone, which means you take a fruiting body of a mushroom, you cut out a little piece of tissue, and in a sterile manner, you put it on top of the agar, and it will start to grow out and form this mycelial culture. Another way, of course, is to use a spore swab, so you can swab some spores on that, and then eventually they will sporulate, form mycelium, and you will have a bunch of different strains on agar. Now keep in mind, if you start with a commercial strain, you're starting with like proven genetics, with a proven culture, so you know pretty much that the results are going to be awesome. If you're starting from spores, like a spore swab, you're going to be getting a bunch of different genetics, you're going to be getting a bunch of different strains, and it really is a crapshoot. It might be awesome, or it might be not so great. Now, step 1 in the mushroom growing process, where you're working with agar and you're working with mushroom cultures, you need to be really sterile, and that's why this stuff is usually done in a laboratory where you can have super clean conditions. Otherwise, any other kind of molds or fungi or anything else that might land on your petri dish is very likely going to outcompete your mushrooms. Now, although in mushroom growing, a petri dish is most likely the place you're going to start with your mushrooms, another option to get a pure mushroom culture is in liquid culture form, and I've talked about this a lot on the channel, but it's basically the exact same thing, but instead of being on a agar medium, it's in a nutritious broth, and it's basically the same kind of mushroom mycelium or mushroom culture that you can use to grow mushrooms. So step 2 in the mushroom growing process is taking a little bit of this mycelium, or taking some of the culture, and transferring it to sterilized grain. This is known as making grain spawn. Again, the grain needs to be sterile before you add your mushroom culture, otherwise whatever happens to be in the grain will definitely outcompete your mushrooms. Once the mycelium is on the grain, it will start to grow throughout the grain, and eventually you will end up with fully colonized grain spawn, which is just a beautiful thing. So you might be wondering, why grain? What's the point of making grain spawn? Well, first of all, mushroom mycelium just absolutely loves grain, right? They're these little pockets of super nutritious medium that the